Okay, we are live. I see some people joining the webinar. What we're going to do is we're going to go through a little bit of housekeeping stuff before we get started, and then we will get on with the presentation. And that way people will have time to join, okay? So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Sam. I am Payzar's head of marketing, and I'm here with Pierre and with Max. Before we get started, and excuse me for just a... I was in a room with my cat, and my cat was annoying me, so I had to let her out. I'm sorry about that. Well, as I was saying, before we get started, we'll run through a couple of housekeeping items. The first thing I wanted to mention is, like all of our webinars, this webinar is being recorded. And after the session is complete, after the session is complete, we will post it on our YouTube channel for everyone to view. You will be able to rewatch it. We will share it with everyone, and we will share the presentation with you too. So if you want to share this with your boss, with your colleagues, with friends, whoever it is, you'll be able to do that. The second point I wanted to make is that we like to make these sessions as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions throughout the session, you'll see there is a chat and a Q&A tab at the bottom of the screen. You can pop your questions in there. We'll try to pick them up as we go along. And now I'd like to invite Pierre. Why don't you come in and why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you, Sam. So my name is Pierre. I'm French. I have quite a diverse payroll experience. Worked on the provider side at the beginning of my career, working for PwC in France. Then moved to the Netherlands and worked for diverse organizations, Booking.com, Under Armour, and OLX. And I just started my own payroll consulting business. The name of this consulting entity is Payroll Flow, and I aim to really support payroll professional or payroll team to define their payroll strategy and also support any implementation. It can be implementing a new provider, developing into new countries, and harmonizing the payroll process. So this is about me. We also have Max.
Yes, hello everyone. Hey Pierre, thanks for joining for this webinar. So I'm the head of service delivery, I read here for Payzar. And like Pierre, I also have a diverse background. Actually, we share an experience at PwC, although I wasn't processing the payroll, I was a senior consultant. But I love being here at Payzar. And prior to joining Payzar, I also headed up global payroll for PwC, Zoom, Crocs, the lovely shoes a lot of people own, but rarely admit wearing. But it's great that the combined experience of Pierre and myself that out-age us, I think our combined experience, Pierre, are here to share with you guys all on the call of how to get your budget approved for payroll, to finally break your payroll paradigm, to move away from very long, stressful hours and piecing together Excel spreadsheets. So if we can move to the agenda, Sam. All right, so we will start with the why, or I say we. Pierre will help us get started with the why. After that, we'll move to how to be very realistic and data-driven in getting your budget approved, because nobody reads 10 to 15 slides anymore. If you scroll to TikTok or Instagram, your attention span is a few seconds. Well, it's almost similar to a business case, so you need to make it very tangible. Then you need to know your audience. Who are you speaking to? If I explain something to my daughter, it's different than I explain something to Pierre, or if I explain something to HR or finance. And then lastly, we hope you to practice premeditatio morale, which is actually from Stoic philosophy, how to be prepared for objections and already have some preempted answers and to drive change. And throughout the session, we'll also have a couple of poll questions, so we really look for your engagement. But hey, enough about and from me, over to you, Pierre.
Thank you, Max. So indeed, we will deep dive into 4 key elements that will help you get a winning business case, and we'll really define how you are going to articulate it and present it to whoever you need to have it signed for. So the first one is start with the why. So with that part, you need to really clearly define the problem or the opportunity. often the business case needs to be approved by people that don't know much about the payroll process. They don't fully understand or are aware of the challenges you are facing. So it's very important to be able to articulate clearly the situation you are in, what kind of gap, issues, and challenges you are facing, what are you trying to resolve, and the benefit for the business, and it will bring to the business in resolving them. The second one is to be indeed realistic and data-driven, and we'll deep dive into concrete example on how you could assess the return on investment of your initiative. Then Max will discuss with us about know your audience, how to adapt your style and what you are going to present in order to convince different kind of team member. And then the last part will be about being prepared for objection and drive the change. And I think we have a pool for the audience, right?
Because we're first going to do this one, Pierre, and then I think we'll do the poll question.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just went through the different points of this slide, right? I just developed a bit what we are going to develop during this session. So I think we can go with a pool.
You bring up the poll question, Sam. Oh, so the question we have is, have you ever written a business case that was approved? Well, Pierre, have you?
Yes. Yes, and this brings a bit of legitimacy in me presenting this session. During my past work experience, I had to prepare a couple of business cases to have, a change of provider or change of system or development of our HRIS system. And these business cases were in vast majority approved. So yes, I learned a lot from this exercise, to having to build a convincing business case.
That's great, Pierre, because then I can also learn it for you, because I think my success rate with business cases is almost 50% when I was still working in global payroll. So I also hope to be educated by you. All right, maybe can you share the results as well, Sam? Yes, great. So we have a few yes, a few no, and a few working on it. Well, that's great. All of you will most likely benefit from what we have to share today. That's great.
Good. So let's start with the why. A very good book that I can recommend from Sam. So if you can move, please, to the next slide. So often, the business case, in whichever format you are going to develop it, it can be a summary, PowerPoint slides. You need to start with explaining what you are trying to achieve, what kind of situation you are in, and in a very understandable way, because the people you are going to present it to, they might not be familiar with your setup, with what is really the payroll process, what the challenges you are facing. So you need to be able to explain clearly what problems, what challenges you want to address with the solution you will ask approval for. Alongside, you need to also convince them that it's needed, that if you continue working that way, you will have consequences, and these consequences are bad. So you need to develop what consequences will it be if nothing's changed, right? If you stay with the current statu quo. The second element is to link your business case with a strategic objective from the business. Super important that the challenge you want to resolve, it's a challenge that the business is also aiming to resolve, right? So let's imagine the business wants to expand to new location, you need to be able to show that the solution you will put in place will enable the flexibility to support the business in global expansion. So linking higher, strategic objective from the organization with your own objective and what the business case will resolve. And then the third element on that part would be to develop the value or benefit the solution you will present will deliver to the business. And in terms of value and benefit, it can be direct, so more cost effective, more accurate, more compliant, but it also can be indirect and intangible business benefit, such as increased employee satisfaction. But you need to really be able to assess what will have the biggest impact on the business and present it clearly there. So in a nutshell, clearly explain the problem you want to solve, how this solution to the problem will also help business goals, broader business goals, and develop the added value of the solution you are presenting. The second part and the second element to have a very successful business case is to be data-driven and realistic. And Sam, if you can go to the next slide, is to use concrete example. The situation you faced within your company, an escalation you had that resulted in a litigation, for instance. So something concrete that you can use. This is, the reality of our situation. This is what happened already, and more could happen if we are not changing. And with that, often you want to develop a clear return on investment, and to also be able to explain when you will reach break-even. So when the benefit from the investment will cover for the cost of the investment. So we have prepared some example on how you can put a value behind some of these benefits that are sometimes intangible. And as a matter of selecting an example, we will talk about a company that has 10,000 employees and with an average salary of 50,000 euros. So this is the company we take as an example, just as a matter of simplification, to be able to put numbers behind some of this direct and indirect benefit.
And maybe a quick question, Pierre. I think I also see the return on investment, which kind of is a calculation based on money at the time, but it also involves like the time to value, right? So what's your experience in how that influences the overall ROI?
Yeah, so obviously the shorter is time to value, the shorter you are going to reach break-even, the better it is. But as long as it's reasonable, as long as it's not in 5 or 10 years, it's often accepted. And decision makers, they like to have this visibility on, when we'll have the financial benefit on implementing such solution. And if it's not presented within your business case, is one of the questions they are going to ask, because they want to understand what's the ROI of approving this kind of solution.
Exactly. Thanks.
Good. So next slide, Sam, is about time saving. So often when you want to improve the payroll process, it will result in saving time, removing data manipulation, for instance, or harmonizing the process. And this is one of the elements that is the easiest to put a value behind, because with time saving, you can calculate how much it will represent by using the hourly rate of the employees that are processing payroll. So high level, let's imagine that with implementing the solution you are going to present, you will gain 30% reduced time to deliver payroll. So then you can calculate 30% of the payroll processing time. It represents, let's imagine, 50 hours. 50 hours times the hourly rate of the payroll specialist. Then it ends up with a value. Same with the second example. Let's imagine you are implementing a solution that will automate input collection. Then you can just deliver there how much time today the team is spending in preparing the input. And this time you translate it into a value. And this is another quantification of the time savings that you can develop in your business case. Then another example, it will be, the solution you want to implement will enable you to be more accurate, to deliver better payroll calculation and more control over the payroll process. And with this, there is obviously also a cost saving, because less error means less mispayment and less write-off. So let's imagine you have a 92% accuracy rate, meaning like 98% of your payroll is accurate, and only 2% is what represents a mispayment or delayed payment. And from this 2%, you have some of them that will be ultimately write-off. Like imagine you have overpaid an employee and the employee never respond to you to get the money back. So there is a very small portion of this mispayment that you will never retrieve. So in case you implement the solution you are aiming for, all of this mispayment will be reduced, and you can assess the value it will represent in terms of write-off. Or also maybe you have concrete example of write-off accounting had to do with the last year payroll process. So you can also use example you have on your side with concrete cases. And then the second example we are using here is litigation cases. So inaccurate payroll leads to probably mispayment and underpayment. And it can be also inaccurate severance payments that are highly sensitive and can lead to litigation cases. So also for that, you can either estimate percentage of case of mispayments that will lead to litigation, or you can use your own company example and litigation cases you had in the past months or years. Yes. So that's another also element to look at when you want to show the ROI, is the reduction of errors and better payroll accuracy.
And Pierre, I know this is later, like the objections, right? But if I were like a CHRO or a CFO, and I say, well, I read all about this in the news, Pierre, about GDPR fines, and it's all great, but it will never materialize, right? So why would we even include such a hypothetical penalty?
It does materialize. There is more and more company getting, like, let's say the example of GDPR is getting enforced, and companies that are not prepared, like the fines, they are massive. So it's a little investment for a massive benefit in terms of being compliant with and removing this risk. It's like a Damocles sword. If you are not compliant with GDPR, at some point it's going to come to you, and the fines are massive.
So, exactly.
And here we have the example of GDPR that you were mentioning. The fines are up to 20 million or 4% of the worldwide annual revenue, which is massive.
Exactly. So it's kind of the risk of doing nothing.
Indeed.
Okay, thanks.
Risk of doing nothing. And that's another element that you can utilize to quantify the ROI of your solution. What kind of compliance or risk mitigation the solution will bring. So, being GDPR compliant and enabling your process to be GDPR compliant is massive in terms of risk mitigation, because the fines are massive and getting more and more enforced. The second one is also penalties, interest charged due to late payroll or tax payment. And this is a more common issue. So this specific example, it's regarding the US interest charge due to late payment. So in the US, there is a 13% tax, payroll tax, a 15% payroll tax, and every day the payment is delayed, there is a 2% interest charge on top of your payment. So based on our example, just 1 day of delay in paying the payroll tax will represent 127,000 euro. And again, this is the example using the company that has 10,000 employees with an average salary of 50,000, but you might have on your own experience with paying fines or penalties that you can use in your business case. So can you report there? And then the last element you can also assess and present in your business case, which is particularly relevant if you are presenting it to HR, is improved employee satisfaction and productivity. So there you can connect the transformation you want to have approved with improved employee satisfaction. So maybe you want to implement a ticketing system, maybe you want to implement online payslip, or a more digital way of processing payroll. And this has a direct positive impact on employee satisfaction. Also, the productivity gain can be a result of a more streamlined payroll process. And with that, so for instance, when it comes to tickets, if you have a more streamlined payroll process, it means that employee will have less question about the payroll payments and payroll calculation. And ultimately, they will create less tickets for you to answer their payroll queries. So it will save time also in processing all of these tickets. So let's take the example of 1,000 tickets that will be created when you have an inefficient payroll process or not digitalized payroll process. Post-implementation, these 1,000 tickets that are created will be eliminated, and it will save around 50,000 euro because it takes time to answer to the ticket and also in terms of employee satisfaction. And also there is another study that says motivated employees are on average 30% more efficient, and so meaning they will generate more revenue to the organization, and the company will be more profitable. So by implementing your payroll solution, you will have more motivated employee, and this motivated employee will be 13% more efficient, which will lead to an increased revenue. And here we can say the impact can be above €500,000. So also very compelling benefit on implementing the solution you are presenting. This is it for example on how you can really quantify tangible and non-tangible benefits to your business case, and really put a value behind the added value you are going to bring to the organization with your proposed solution.
I'm going to jump in here for a second because there's a second poll I'd like to run, which I think would be an interesting way to see where people are and where they're getting pushback from with their business cases.
Interesting. But by the way, we're not recording who chose what, so feel free to share. We'll not go out and go to your legal and procurement team or audit or HR or finance. Let me not single out legal and procurement. But if you have a business case, so where do you get the most pushback from? Pierre, what's the organizational function that you got the most pushback from in your days?
Myself, it was mainly HR and HRIT, so the team responsible for the HRIS system.
Yeah. Interesting. Let me also return the question. I got the most support from audit, right? It's kind of a reverse question because audit typically loves improvements because they're also not paying for the budget. So they'll be very supportive of this, and it might be influencing some finance folks. But I typically got the most feedback from a pushback from the finance folks, actually, Pierre. It kind of depended where you reported into, right? So if you would report into finance or if you would report into HR, which kind of changes the dynamic. That's interesting. HR, so people agree with you, Pierre. HR is the most chosen answer.
But also it depends of your background, right? If you have background in finance, you understand better what is required and what finance leader will be looking for. So you adapt, yourself to convince finance people. Whereas when you have more HR background, you will also be more inclined to be convincing to HR leaders. So
true indeed. All right, so that's the segue into knowing your audience to tailor the business case to whoever needs to approve it. Because if you would be speaking to finance, they might want to hear different arguments than you would be speaking to HR. So we're going to talk about, I think, each of these different functions, which would be the audience and how their priorities might change. So Sam, let's move into the first one, which I presume will be finance. Yes, exactly. Finance, which, well, you might even need to define further into financial planning and analysis, FP&A or accounting, or statutory reporting. It might be that audit also actually sits under finance, but they do have significantly different priorities. I've reported both into HR and finance in my world. I think when I worked over at Crocs, I reported into finance. When I worked at Shell, reported into HR. When I worked at Zoom, I reported into accounting specifically. So I think I do also have some experience here. And just to quote you, I once also had a finance guy who said, nothing is really breaking, so why shall we fix it? Right? Which is an awful starting point because with your feet on the ground with your team, everything that's broken, but you work day and night to fix it. And then the leadership up high doesn't really know what you're doing. So, which is interesting. So let's look at their priorities. So cost management and efficiency. Of course, they're very budget driven. They're very much driven in terms to let's do more with the same or less. So whenever there's efficiency, for instance, through automation or strategic location management, where you would want to hire people who would actually do the work, they're very much interested into actual dollar savings, not so much the hypothetical savings, but actual dollar savings that help the budgeting process. On the other side, they are also, in my experience, sensitive to elements around risk. Right? Finance is a very risk-averse function, unless you work for a company that's willing to take massive risks. But typically in this day and age, where if you take a big risk and you end up on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Glassdoor, and nobody wants to work for your company anymore, there's litigations. Typically, they want to be a little bit more risk-averse, and that could span into a better control environment or better providers. Then tax compliance, I think that also relates to the example you gave, Pierre, around those fines and audits, right? Or, for instance, also unnecessary gross-ups. Then strategic financial leadership, which I think is more around getting the data and the analytics you actually need to run your business. Because if you would draw some parallels between governments and the finance function or businesses, the hard work we in payroll do in the end translate into a or more submissions to the governments, which means it goes into their statistics, which then is presented to the leaders of a company to make political decisions. That's how far our data comes. But also, if you look at the revenue streams of the governments, over 60% on average across the world is generated from payroll. Therefore, we provide all these statistics to the governments through our filings. Why shouldn't it be the same to our finance leaderships? And I know you've been a fan of that too, Pierre, in your business.
Providing insights. Indeed, as you mentioned, in lots of companies, staff cost is the biggest expense. So if you are able to deliver, more detail on what this staff cost is, it will help a lot leaders to take strategic decisions.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks. And then, of course, there's also the opportunities which are more or less directly linked to the priorities. But if you would improve your operational efficiency, it would mean that if you're in a high growth company, that you can adapt to the pace of that company, support international expansion without saying, okay, give me a couple of months to set up a payroll, give me some new headcount because I need to process 5 more payrolls for 500 employees. You would be able to say, well, I have a detailed plan, a rollout plan for each new country. I can find a provider. I have a standardized process with controls. So, bring on those countries and I'll help you to drive operational efficiency. Then, as Pierre said, labor cost is typically the highest cost of a company. So therefore, if you want to mitigate any risk, you would want to mitigate risk in that highest risk area that also has the highest value. So I think this comes down to us also just explaining the high volumes of a process. And I have a quote that I once gave to, it was actually an HR leader and a finance leader where we were at the table when they were asking me, what's payroll all about? Right? I said, well, payroll is a career you guys have missed, but I've joined. And I just said to them, I pay, or my team and I pay 10,000 employees, right? But we have 120 unique wage types for each individual employee. They started to do the math. I said, but then we also run around 15 different pay runs. We have 12 months. We might have some off-cycle runs. And multiply all of that. And that's the unique data elements, by the way, HR, that you've promised to the employees, and finance, you record in your financials. So please secure me some budget to make sure all these data elements are actually correct, accurate, and compliant. Well, that kind of bezeled their minds. They didn't know that this all went into payroll, which then, of course, leads to kind of right? Accurate, compliant, and timely payrolls, which leads to improved compliance with local, but also international tax regulations, especially if you have cross-border workers, or nowadays where the work from anywhere policies are being implemented, you could hire someone everywhere. But then again, you still need to assess, maybe there's a permanent establishment, maybe there is a risk of at arm's length, where you might be liable for some corporate tax. So making sure that the leadership has ease of mind that they won't be burdened with a special bill or non-compliance is great. And then, of course, just delivered accurate staff cost data, which relates to, I think, what you also shared around the strategic leadership for finance, Pierre. Give them actual data beyond the Excel report. Hey, this is what we have paid, right? But if they want to look at, if I would pay 1,000 on average across a few EMEA countries, what would it actually cost me? Oh, Pierre, you're French. You know that if you pay 1,000 in France, it almost doubles in terms of costs, right? With all the different employer social security contributions. Whereas if you might pay it in the UK, if my recollection is correct, it's like 13-point-something% that only comes on top for employer cost, similar to Ireland. So you might look at those labor arbitrages that finance needs for the strategic location mapping. Anyway, enough about finance, or actually, depends on where you sit in the US. Some said finance. I always loved finance instead of finance. But let's move to our friends from. Go ahead, Pierre.
I have to jump in as an American. I have never heard anyone say that.
Oh, really? I've
never heard anyone say finance.
No, I had a few.
But that would be amazing if I did.
Finance.
So I want to hear someone say that now. Sorry, you can keep going now.
Good. Let's move over to human resources. Although that whole terminology is also put to light, right? You have now chief people officers, because I always said I'm a human, but I'm not a resource. But okay, that's maybe a whole different area for a webinar. So let's look at some of those priorities for our beloved friends from HR. Of course, the employee value proposition, employee engagement, the employee experience is very much top of mind, and rightfully so, because there is a scarcity of talent out there. Everybody wants the best talent across the world. If you would look at just our profession, right? It's very difficult to find very good experienced payroll professionals who are available. And if they're available, they're highly paid and they're highly on demand. So you want to make sure you can offer the best experience also from a pay experience perspective, which if you're, for instance, a retail business, I've worked in retail at Crocs. It was very important to have absolutely accurate data and very timely payments linked to the hours that they've worked. Maybe you would have some on-demand pay. So you want to make sure that engagement is always correct and that you deliver on HR's promise. A little bit related to the finance leadership, HR analytics is also something that's very much top of mind and demanded by legislation nowadays, because you have the gender pay gap reporting that has been around for many years in, for instance, the UK or Ireland, but it's coming across a much more general legislation. I believe even the EU is working on a directive for that as well.
Equity directive that is coming.
Yeah, exactly. Right. That's so you need to be prepared. And although within the global HCM systems, Workday, SuccessFactors, Oracle, HiBob, name it, there's a lot of data there, but they do miss portions of data that only we as payroll actually hold, like the actual payments, the actual social security contributions, the actual benefits. So we do play a big role there. And the other one that's now, I think, for higher headcount companies being enforced as of 2024 is ESG reporting, right? Environmental, social, and governance reporting, where you would just have to report on these items. So you need to make sure that you have a platform or a provider that can provide you with those type of details, because HR will be reaching out this year. Just be prepared. They will be reaching out for that. And then overall workforce management, where in the day and age of my parents, it was just an employment relationship and lifetime employment, right? You go into a company and you work there for life. Well, that whole dynamic has changed. If you would look at the businesses and their makeup of their workforce, you would have contractors, you would have people who are paid based on an EOR, an employer of record. You have people who are based on fixed-term contracts or indefinite contracts or hourly paid or bi-monthly paid. So you would want to make sure you offer a tailored solution and enable that as a payroll function, which leads to our opportunities to improve employee satisfaction, or actually more so avoid employee dissatisfaction, I would say, because everybody expects to be paid on time, accurately, right? I love football. I have the analogy of us being a goalkeeper. Everybody expects the goalkeeper to get any ball, but nobody expects the striker to hit every chance. And we're the goalkeeper of the organization. So we want to make sure we leverage the technology, right? HRIS. And actually, I think you maybe added this term ATS, Pierre. I don't know what ATS means to you.
I did add it. I think it's a time and attendance system. Yes, I think
exactly. Good. So yeah, there's a lot of platforms out there that offer integrated solutions, right? But if you would look at time and attendance or time tracking, which are two completely different beasts, but you want to leverage technology. Well, that was one of the trends also that we've seen over the past years, is that there's a lot of companies who've hugely invested in HCMs, right? Global Workday rollouts, and typically it's the HR budget. And they want to maximize their investment in those platforms. So they want to see integrations. They want to make sure they can even reduce staff headcount because there's more level of automation. They want to make sure their HCMs are enriched with a lot of data. So they're looking into payroll as well to leverage that technology that they paid for.
So, yeah, so a quick correction. So ATS is applicant tracking system. So that will be the tool recruitment is using. And there you want to also have this tool integrated with your payroll engine, because you want, once the recruitment is finalized, the data of the applicant flowing into your payroll with all new hire information. So this is what, this is the ATS system,
Great. So
applicant tracking system.
Aha, great. Thanks, Pierre. And then the last one is utilizing payroll. I think we've already discussed this a little bit, but I do remember one project I want to mention where we as payroll could make a difference and actually get a budget for change is that strategic location planning, where you might want to say, hey, we want to build SHR, COE, so Center of Excellences in certain geographies, but hey, payroll, help me plan for that. What is the cost of labor here? What is the cost of labor there? We already have some people there. We will then combine it with talent data and any other organizational data, but payroll, help me understand what the dynamics of those countries are. Which really helps the strategic planning. All right, we move to audit. Oh, I always love audits. There's people who hate audit, or I won't say hate, it's a very strong word, but dislike audit. I always said, bring them in. Come check my processes, because it's always good to get an outside look. And most of all, just like Fred, for people who don't know Fred, Fred is our relatable global payroll manager friend. He actually ended up being under audit. But as a little teaser for chapter 3 in Warsaw in the event, in case you want to join, Fred might use the audit findings as a instigator for their business case. So very much aligned to the finance function, but then going a little bit deeper is risk assessment for audit. They want to see scalable processes. They want as much risk avoidance as they could get within a process, and especially payroll, because they know payroll's always on their radar because of the high volume of transactions, but also because of the labor cost making up almost 60% of their P&L. And they want to make sure there's compliance monitoring, especially if you work in different geographies, different countries. They also know this is a complex area. So they want to make sure, first of all, is the filing done? And if so, can you show me the evidence? And that second step sometimes is fairly difficult if you work with a lot of providers. What if you were asked, tell me at any moment in time, show me that all the filings are done. And then show me that you've reconciled the actual amounts in those filings against the payments by the cash post. Well, that probably leads into an operational audit, because every year you can count on it, they will come in and do an audit on your operational processes. And also you see a trend, finance, HR, and audit all look for those analytics within the tech platforms.
And I will say audit team is one of the easiest stakeholder to convince, because most of the payroll transformation is including this kind of gains, right? Improved compliance, a more streamlined process, enabling data analysis. So, what they are looking for, the opportunities, they are already covered within what you want to implement. And if you are able to clearly translate that and explain what you want to achieve to the audit team, they will be your supporter. And it's a very powerful supporter within an organization. Internal audit team, if they support your project, it will be very easy to have it then approved by other stakeholders.
Exactly. Audit could be your friend or foe, right? But typically, in terms of business cases, they could be your friends. So get them on board, indeed, because they will see the benefit. Partially also, Pierre, because typically the budget doesn't come out of the audit budget. So they will always support all kinds of initiatives because they're not paying.
Indeed, because often, so majority of cases, payroll is reporting to HR finance, as we have the bridge between these two departments. So audit is a bit of an outsider, so it will not hit their budget. So if it's improving compliance and a more streamlined control process, and they don't have to pay for it,
it is a win-win for them. I totally agree. So then we have the benefits on the other side of this spectrum, or the priorities. I see those as well. I think we've already touched on those, but streamlining and standardizing a payroll process is something that's pretty much worthwhile, because if you would think of those walkthroughs, just everyone on the call, you, Pierre, how many walkthroughs have you had with audit? Right.
So once per year, for sure, if things go well, and if you have any elements that needs to be adjusted, it can be more.
Okay. I still remember when it was either internal audit or external audit. I had a couple of those per year because you had an internal audit that spanned across the entire scope or a selective scope, but then you also had a local, either statutory financial audits or non-financial audits. So I used to create normal slide packs for audit to say, okay, this is how the process works. And it's much easier to explain to say, hey, 80% of our process is actually standardized. And yes, we still meet 20% of that to meet local demands. So you want to standardize it, streamline it, and then allow for kind of localities. And give them consistent data, right? They don't want to go through GTNs in France or in India or in the US and needed to piece everything together. So it's very important that you have a consistent data model that they all understand, which makes their data analysis a lot better.
Yeah, and also I will recommend you to utilize audit findings to your advantage. It's something also you can utilize in your business case. So the audit we had last year, these are the findings, and this is how the solution we are presenting in this business case will result these audit points. So use it, as an additional element to reinforce your case.
Exactly. I also love just get the audit finding report, right, and go with it. And typically there's even an action listed in the audit finding to say you need to fix this by X date, right? And in order to do that, well, I need to get some budget. All right, let's move to legal and procurement.
Before you do that, we have a question in the Q&A right here. We have a question okay. I have a question from Irshad Max. He's asking you something.
Oh, okay. So, interest. I was hoping you were looking at the slides as well, Irshad, but there's indeed something on my hoodie that says keep calm. It says no gas erop, which means nothing keep calm, just keep on going full energy. So that's it. I don't buy in the keep calm thing. Let's just move on and with the speed of light. All right.
That's your motto, Max.
Exactly. Happy we cleared that out. Great. Thanks, Irshad. So let's keep on moving with the speed of light and nothing keep calm because we're moving to legal and procurement. Well, let me just say it's a wonderful profession, but I'm also happy I didn't choose it because that's a difficult profession. If you look at their priorities, of course, it's legal compliance, a little bit related to data security and privacy with all the audits out there, but also the IT attacks and the hacks. So they want to make sure everything's compliant, but also in terms of terms and conditions. Contract management is, of course, a big thing. The more standardized the contracts are also from a payroll perspective, the better it is. But at the other end, you also want to leverage the best pricing. And sometimes you need to leverage scope, but sometimes you need to leverage maybe a boutique vendor. So that's something that they're truly interested in. Then litigations, management, and employment-related disputes. That's around worker classification, right? Is someone actually part of the workforce? Are they contracted? What's the risk of them starting a litigation? So you want to make sure you limit the risk of any dispute of late payments or incorrect payments or overpayments, right? When you have overpayments in some countries, you can't just deduct it from the next pay. You need to have a written consent to be able to do that.
Like Poland, for instance, that's the case.
Yeah, don't do an overpayment anywhere, but specifically not in Poland, right? They will say dziękuję bardzo, thank you for the money, and it will be difficult to get the money back. So that's also a priority for legal and procurement. Therefore, there are, of course, a lot of opportunities. Let me just highlight in the interest of time. One that's also for us important, adherence to InfoSec or information security standards with your ISAE statements or ISO statements. That are really important just to safeguard the data of your employees, because it was much different when I started payroll on the 7th of June 2006. People were just handing me their timesheets. People were just getting printed pay slips, right? And they would just, okay, I read it, I shred it, and just throw it in the bin. You can't do that anymore. Everybody's very, very protective of their data. So you need to make sure you adhere to all of those different standards. The world has changed. All right, which I think leads me to you, Pierre.
But that's totally true. I remember when I started my payroll career, also it was completely different ways of working. We were printing the payslip and checking payslip one by one with a highlighter,
Yes.
wow, it's
Although there was great satisfaction in that, right, Pierre? I also remember that printing the pay slips, like my input-output validation was with my eyes. At the time,
yes.
I need glasses, but now I do need. Just going one by one, the timesheet, right? And then I handed it over. It's actually in the latest blog. Handed it over to my team lead, very anxious. And then I got it back with all kinds of post-its with remarks. I'm like, oh, man.
Oh yeah, you got them as well.
Yes.
And also you had your calculator, right? Where you were
Yes.
calculating yourself that the right rates were applied. And my God.
Those were the days.
Yeah.
Anyways, happy we're now in this day and age where we need a normal laptop to do the work. Anyway, let's progress to the next slide. I think it's one of the last ones, Sam.
Good. So obviously, when you present a business case, you are going to have questions, objections. It's not going to be, easy ride where you present and they sign whatever you're asking for. So whomever, the stakeholder or the leadership team you are going to present it to, they will have questions. Even if they are supporting of your initiative, they will challenge you. So before presenting, you need to think about objections. What can they ask? What part of this business case could be challenged? And how can I proactively address these questions and these challenges? And one way to do it is that you put yourself in the shoes of the people you are going to present it to, or you all ask trusted partners, so colleagues that you trust within your team or you are working with that can provide a different perspective on your case and challenge it. So try to socialize your business case before presenting it so you can get feedback on what can be improved, what kind of questions can be asked, and try to integrate this element into it. Also, you will probably be asked for alternative solution. So let's imagine you found the perfect system that will cover all of the prerequisites you have and resolve all of your challenges. You will be asked what other solution exist in the market that are similar to one you are presenting. Why have you selected this one and not another one? So also think about exploring alternative solution and prepare a comparative assessment. So what is the best tool available in the market? Why is it the best for your own situation? And why the other solution or tools were not selected. Because it's also an element that will be probably requested. The first point regarding objection is to involve your stakeholder. Even before the presentation, you need to share with them the challenges you are facing and try to collaborate with them in resolving the challenges. Because then they will not be surprised by what you are going to present. They will be familiar with it and they will support you more. Also, your stakeholder can give you alternative solution or new ideas that you can add to your business case. So try to involve your stakeholder as soon as possible to really create this trust and that you work as partners. They are aware of the challenges you have and the solution you want to implement, and you are aware of their own challenge, and you try to also resolve their challenges with your business case. So let's imagine you are part of the finance team, and you are aware that within HR they have some challenges in getting accurate employee data and validation of the inputs it's sent to payroll. If within your solution, the solution you are presenting, you have like automated input data validation, review of variances and so on, it will resolve their problem. So they will support it. So try to communicate a lot with your stakeholder, share your issues, try to, within your business case, resolve their own challenges, and they will be your supporter. And then the last point would be to create a clear implementation roadmap. So the solution you want to present, it will need to be implemented. What does it mean? What kind of resources will you need? What will be the time requirement in terms of involvement from different teams? So if you are, let's say, implementing a new payroll provider, obviously you will have you will need involvement from the HR team to implement, to deliver the file, to have interviews with the provider and so on. So also try to have deliver a clear picture of what it means for your stakeholder, or what kind of involvement in terms of time, but also in terms of resource. Maybe they will have to develop a connection between systems. So try to think about that and be as prepared as you can get for the presentation.
Perfect. Thanks, Pierre. Oh, I think everyone is now able to create a true business case that can be approved, Pierre. We've just changed the world of global payroll.
Wow. No, but I really hope that these few tips will help you in developing a more successful business case, and that a few of the points will add value to you when you are going to prepare or present your next case.
And if they need help, Pierre, they'll be able to find you on LinkedIn and shoot you a message so you can help them out, right?
Also, yes, I can definitely help because I'm a payroll consultant. So if you need any support in developing a business case, or reviewing it, or presenting it even to your leadership team, I'm available for that. So please reach out to me and let's talk.
Great. Thanks, Pierre. I think, Sam, that brings us to the end of the slides. Anyone have any other questions?
Yeah.
Sam or myself? Otherwise, I'll leave it to you to have the closing housekeepings around slides, recordings.
We have a question right now from Laura. Laura is asking, Sam, I understand the webinar is recorded. Is it possible to receive this via email? Yes, the answer is yes. We will upload it to our YouTube channel, and we will send you an email with the webinar and with the presentation, so you can share it, review it, etc., etc.
It's great, Laura. That assumes that you found it interesting, because you might want to be able to see it again and get some slides, which is good feedback. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Laura.
Do we have any other questions from anyone? I don't think so. Okay. Well, if you do have further questions, go ahead, type them now. If not, we are going to wrap things up. As I just mentioned, the session is being recorded. We will put it on YouTube, and we will send you the deck very soon. And if you haven't been to our YouTube channel before, check it out. Go to YouTube, put in Payzar, you'll find us, and we have all of our webinars there, and we have a lot of interviews and interesting conversations in our talk show, Plug and Pay, where we talk about payroll strategy, payroll transformation, and all kinds of interesting topics in the world of global payroll. And I think with that, we can finally wrap things up. So thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope that you will join us again for one of our future webinars.
Great. Thanks, Pierre, for joining and being our guest. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for
All right. Au revoir.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.